Drinking buddies. I was just at a really awesome tasting, and I wanted to share my thoughts on it with you. Harlen Wheatley was there on Zoom, so we got to do a Q&A with him, and he was drinking along with us as we went through the flight. And yeah, let's get right to it.
I'm your drinking buddy.
All right, drinking buddies. So the flight was really fun. We went through all of these, each one, and we all discussed them. And as we were going through them, we were able to ask Harlen Wheatley, Master Distiller of Buffalo Trace, questions about them. The tasting started with Wheatley vodka. It's got his picture right on the bottle and his name right on the bottle, Wheatley vodka. And you guys know I'm not a big vodka drinker. I feel like if you're gonna mix a cocktail, it's better to use something that's gonna add flavor to the cocktail. But I bought this bottle to have on hand so that if I ever have friends over that want to use some vodka, or I have a recipe that calls for vodka, I will have it on hand because it is a good vodka. It's distilled 10 times. So it does, for being vodka, it's a good product. But the next one up, I was so apprehensive of because of the price point, because it's vodka, and I just feel like vodka is vodka is vodka. And this might be the one exception to that rule. So the next one is called Harlen D. Wheatley's Clix vodka. It's called Clix because the Roman numerals for CLIX are 159, which is the number of times it's been distilled. It's stripped out so many of those negative flavors. It's stripped out so many of the nasty things that you might taste in a vodka that makes it smell like rubbing alcohol and taste like rubbing alcohol. And what you're left with is a really unique experience that I would totally sip neat. And that sounds crazy because it's vodka, but I believe at this point it's transcended being vodka. It's something else at this point. The 159 times distilled, it smells kind of like a sugar cookie and it tastes like lemon zest. I know that might sound crazy, but I didn't believe it either. When people had told me that's what it tasted like, I went, yeah, sure. It's vodka, so it's gonna taste like rubbing alcohol and it's gonna smell like rubbing alcohol, and it doesn't. That product is probably worth every penny, especially if you're a vodka fan. So you might wanna look for a bottle of that in your area. I would recommend it, except for the price. The price is very high, but like I said, for what it is, it's worth it. It comes in an amazing box, and it comes in a really nice crystal decanter that you could use for an infinity bottle or something else later if you finish the bottle itself. Really nice bottle. I was skeptical myself, and I definitely was surprised with how much I liked it. So next up, we did the classic Buffalo Trace, and we were using an official tasting glass, which is a little bit different from a Glencairn, and I did notice slightly different tasting notes when I was drinking out of an official tasting glass. I have one somewhere, and I don't know where I put it. But Marco from Nana's, this was at Nana's Kitchen. I talk about them a lot, but it's a great spot if you're ever in Tucson. But anyway, Marco had made up some glasses that said Nana's on them, and then they said Buffalo Trace. For the tasting, and he did a really good job with those. So Buffalo Trace was next. Solid bottle. It's unfortunate that it's not available on every shelf because that's the idea behind it. And he did share a really cool story about Buffalo Trace when we were talking about it, and I have to share it because it was just too cool. So he was here in Arizona in around 2000, 2001, he had said, and they were launching Buffalo Trace in Arizona. And he goes into an AJ's. Now, if you live in Arizona, you might know what an AJ's is. It's kind of a higher end grocery store. They have like an entire section that's just devoted to like high-end gifts and high-end meat. They have a sushi bar. It's a higher end grocery store that is here in Arizona. And they do have a nice selection of whiskeys there. But this is 2000, so this is before anyone really cared or really knew that much about Pappy Van Winkle. I shouldn't say cared about it, but not that many people knew about Pappy Van Winkle. And the manager went up to him and was complaining that they didn't get enough Pappy Van Winkle and that they need to give them more Pappy Van Winkle, and then proceeded to push an entire cart of Pappy Van Winkle up to him and say, I need you to sign all of these. which was just such a crazy story because it's the thought of an entire cart of Pappy Van Winkle. First of all, you know, even back when it wasn't as sought out after as it is now, it was still something that was heavily allocated, very small release. She has a cart of it and once more. Crazy. I would love, you know, to have more than the one bottle that I have, which isn't even technically Pappy, it's the old Rip 10, but it's Van Winkle, so I'm very happy with that. Next up, we did Eagle Rare, and you know, you guys know Eagle Rare is a solid 10-year product. They did have them available at the tasting for purchase. I elected to buy the E.H. Taylor because we'll talk about that one next. It is my favorite of the more... It's still allocated, but it's one of the more available products. These three and the Weller Special Reserve are probably the 4 bottles that are the most common to find from Buffalo Trace as far as bourbon goes. And you know, this one's a little bit harder, this one's a little bit harder, but... And in my area, Weller, I've seen way more of this and way more of this than I've seen Weller Special Reserve, but I guess Arizona's kind of unique when it comes to that. But Eagle Rare and Buffalo Trace, the question was asked, are the age statements going to be dropped off these bottles? Are they going to be younger products so that they can get more out there? And the answer was no. He wants to keep them the same quality. So this is going to continue to be 8 years and this is going to continue to be 10. So we got that from the horse's mouth, as they would say. And that's what he said. It's not changing anytime soon. Next up we did E.H. Taylor, which was great because I was able to buy it. You know, I have a bottle up here. I've had a few bottles in the past, but it is one that I really enjoy, so I try not to hoard it because it's not that hard of a bottle for me to come by. So that's one I don't mind pouring fairly regularly. It's not an expensive bottle, it's just a harder to find bottle, and I'm willing to put in the legwork to find it. So that's one that I drink fairly regularly. You know, my single barrel, that one's one I'm probably gonna drink more on special occasions because that one's really hard to find, but you know, the E.H. Taylor, I'm gonna drink it. It's a good product and it's my favorite of this particular grouping. And then next up we had a question mark, and when we sat down we were given some Buffalo Trace chocolates, and they said to save those for the end. So all of us were thinking, oh, it's just gonna be Buffalo Trace bourbon cream, which is a fine product. It's just for a whiskey tasting. Buffalo Trace bourbon cream coming at the end wouldn't necessarily, you know, make us feel very happy. You know, it's a good product. I like it. I actually prefer it to Bailey's. I just wanted it to be something special, and it was something special. It was a Stagg Junior batch 16, so I do have a bottle of that, but it was so nice to enjoy it with 60 people, hear their thoughts on it. You know, everyone from bourbon experts to bourbon noobs, to people who might not even drink bourbon but were brought there by a friend that wanted them to come with them. You know, they seemed to quite enjoy the Stagg Junior even though it's high in proof. It is certainly a unique experience to taste something that's that high proof and still be able to talk about the complexities and everything going on there. And I think Stagg is probably one of the best bottles when it comes to that because it's not overly hot. It's just got so much flavor. So it was really nice to taste that there. I was able to ask a question, and the question I asked is, you know, in the days of heavily allocated products, and you know, we are everything's growing in popularity. Have you considered switching for really hard to find bottles from 750 milliliter bottles to 375 milliliter bottles, so that twice as many bottles are out there for the consumers? And he had kind of said that it's not something that's feasible because of restaurants. They want the 750 milliliter bottles. The restaurants buy a lot as well. It's probably not as much as the consumer does, but you know, restaurants get a lot of the bottles, and it would be very, I would imagine it would be very difficult to have, you know, a separate assembling for the consumer and for restaurants. And I do see where he's coming from with that. But he did mention that some of their special release stuff that's coming out, you know, over the next few years, that'll be a very limited run, will be in 375 milliliter bottles, so that more of it is out there. So it does sound like that's something that they have considered in the past. I mean, obviously they're a very intelligent company. Another thing that was asked, you know, I'm sure some of you might have heard that there's somewhat of an oak shortage, and that the cooperages that make these barrels are running out of stock and it's causing issues. Well, Buffalo Trace actually owns their own barrel creating, you know, cooperage, and that it's not something that should be affecting them, because they foresaw that this was going to be an issue and they were able to take care of it before it became a big issue. So the tasting was really fun, and it was really cool to be able to interact with Harlen Wheatley. I would consider him to be possibly the most important man in all of whiskey right now, because he helms the most sought after distillery. Their bottles are heavily sought after, and a lot of people, I know sometimes when people are getting into bourbon, they complain about, I don't like Buffalo Trace because it's so hard to find their products. They make a lot of whiskey. They're making more whiskey than a lot of other distilleries that you can buy their products on the shelves. The difference? People aren't buying those other distilleries as much as they're buying Buffalo Trace. These bottles hit the shelves and people want to buy them immediately because they're so good. They're so good, it has created the entire secondary market. I can honestly say that I don't think a secondary market would exist without Buffalo Trace. So people want their bottles, they're that good. When I have found that, occasionally I will find a bottle that I don't think is worth hunting for, case in point, Weller Special Reserve, but it was never meant to be a special bottle. It's a bottle that is a bottom shelf weeder. It's comparable to Maker's Mark. It's comparable to Larceny. But you can buy a Maker's Mark and Larceny at gas stations. The difference is people go crazy because of the name Weller. It's to me, it's kind of like, going crazy for every single Chevrolet because they also make the Corvette. The Corvette's a great, cool car, but if you buy that, 1980 Chevette, it's not going to be the same thing. I'm not saying that Weller Special Reserve is a 1980 Chevette. I'm just saying it's not that Corvette that the old Rip 10 is, or the Weller 12 year, or the 15 year, the 20 year, the 23 that I've never tasted before, but one day.
Thank you so much on this call.
We were talking about Stagg Junior. He did mention that they took the Junior off the bottle because it's not a Junior. It's a product that it's a barrel-proof product. It's a tough product, so they took that Junior off the bottle. It did not come off the bottle because they're discontinuing George T. Stagg, which was my theory. So I was proven wrong. George T. Stagg is here to stay, so hopefully the barrels will meet the standards this year, because unfortunately that's what happened last year. The barrels didn't meet the standards. And so hopefully they do this year and we get a George T. Stagg release this year, and hopefully I'll at least get to try a pour of it somewhere at a bar or something. But drinking buddies, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.